Greetings, folks, and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things Maker and embedded and lovely. This week, we're back to a more regular sort of show, looking at some projects, looking at some funding website things, and some fantastic new news, including those lovely little new Arduino modular boards. You may have seen them. And if you look in the background, you may also notice that the madness is slowly abating here. I'm finally going to have some tool storage on the wall. There's some rather janky LED strips around there. Things are changing in the Attic of Dreams for the better. Finally, which is very nice. Anyway, that's enough waffling up top. Let's get on with the show. We're starting this week by looking at a couple of projects, although the first one is not so much a project as a great tip from Ralph S. Bacon. I'm sure many of you are familiar with him. He has been making Arduino videos for a very long time, and he is someone who I've learned an enormous amount from. This is a video, in fact, where he has learned something from someone else and then turned it into his own thing to help us, and it is all to do with rotary encoders. So, in typical Ralph S. Bacon style, as well as giving you a fantastic bit of code that will make your Arduino life easier, he explains how rotary encoders work in general. In fact, this isn't his first video on rotary encoders, as you just saw flash up on the screen there. He has another one that talks all about them. And as you also know, from my personal experience, I've spent a bit of time messing around with rotary encoders because I was making a editing tool, a physical editing tool using Arduinos and stuff like that. I scrapped that, incidentally. I found in my testing that no matter how well I got it working, it wasn't actually any easier or faster than the mouse and keyboard. I'll do an autopsy on that project at some point, I'm sure. This is all about debouncing. Now, the bounce on any kind of rotary encoder is essentially anything that brings failure into the reading. I'll let you watch the video. Ralph explains it far better than I could in the short time I have. This is Ralph taking some code from someone else who posted it on GitHub and making it a little bit more Arduino friendly, using interrupts and things like that to make it this bomb-proof rotary encoder code that will work every single time. It's a fantastic video, and yeah, Ralph is one of the better Arduino YouTubers out there, really, just in terms of raw content. If there's something you want to hear, he's probably talked about it. I've been a big fan of Ralph S. Bacon for years. I'm glad to see that he's still going strong and still creating things that I am finding useful to this day. So yes, Ralph S. Bacon, I will leave a link to this in the description of the video. Up next, the Geoleaf. These are 3D printed geometric Nanoleaf-esque lights that are incredibly cheap to make, and this is the brainchild of DIY Machines, an old friend of Electromaker who has made several things for Electromaker, is a big part of the Electromaker kits, and this is a really fantastic project. If you're familiar with Nanoleaves, you know that they're incredibly expensive, and this gets around that quite neatly by making it all entirely at home with 3D printed parts, cheap and easy to buy LEDs, and an ESP32 driving it all. So if you want to see them in action, there's some great footage of it in the video that he makes, which I suggest you go and watch. But of course, this being a DIY Machines project, not only do you get a fantastic and clear video, you also get a very, very thorough write-up and guide as to how you can make this yourself. So if you aren't familiar with Nanoleaves in general, the basic idea behind them is that they are these colourful panels that are more for decoration than for general lighting. And that's what makes this such a perfect project to emulate, because you don't need to worry about getting super bright LEDs or warm white LEDs or anything that's going to look good as actual lighting. The whole point is they are decorative, and they do look fantastic. So go to this project, follow it if you'd like, make some. I have plans for that myself. As you notice, things are getting a little bit more colourful here. The 3D printer is out, and this is one of the things that I will be starting by making one of these just to see how it goes. So I will be able to get back to you and let you know how easy it is to do. But for now, I will leave a link to this in the description of the video, just to see how it goes. So I will be able to get back to you and let you know how easy it is to do. But for now, I will leave a link to this in the description of the video. Now, moving on to something that I did this week. This was a review that I did for the Electromaker website, and this was for quite an interesting hat for the Raspberry Pi. This is something that is distributed by Digilent, and it's from the company MCC, which just stands for Measurement Computing. And it's a very apt title for their company because they make fantastic measurement devices, these ones specifically as hats for the Raspberry Pi. Now, the review itself is of the MCC152. Now, this one is an analog output hat for the Raspberry Pi. It also has a bunch of digital inputs and outputs. This one you see down here, these are the programmable digital inputs and outputs, and these are the analog outputs here. There are two analog outputs that can give from 0 to 5 volts voltage out, and it is true analog output. It has a digital to analog converter on board. And these boards are stackable as well. These jumpers here, depending on how you orient them, allow you to stack up to 8 boards on top of each other. So that's 64 inputs and outputs, for digital inputs and outputs that is, and 16 analog outputs, all from one Raspberry Pi if needs be. This is partially a review, partially a high-level overview of what the board is. I spent some time playing with it. I am not an industrial embedded engineer. I'm not an electronics engineer. If you are someone who is working, developing in an industrial environment, you will likely get a lot more out of this board than I did. That said, it is a overwhelmingly positive review, simply because everything this board sets out to do, it appears to do very well, and it is incredibly easy to use no matter who you are. It has a very, very robust Python and C library, both of which seem to be being given just as much love as one another. I can't tell you how many things I've looked into which has, can be programmed in multiple languages, but the C library is perfect and the Python library is an afterthought. This is not true at all. Absolutely piece for piece. And the thing itself, it even has a GUI. So if you just want to set up this for someone who isn't even into programming, doesn't know what they're doing, to actually mess around with the inputs and outputs of the thing itself, they can. In fact, I still have it plugged in next to me on the desk just here. I didn't even realize I had that still there. I've been playing with this right up until the last moment before doing this show, because it's actually quite a lot of fun. But yes, that's beside the point. The thing itself is up on the Electromaker website. It is a thorough look through of it, and I will probably at some point spend a little bit more time playing with it. And of course, this is the Electromaker show, so have no fear, this little thing will be getting given away, the hat itself. And as I said, it's quite nice that it is compatible with all Raspberry Pis, as long as they have the full 40-pin complement of GPIOs, which means that no matter what Pi that you are rocking at home, if you enter the competition to win this, when it comes, it'll be in a few weeks, that's something that will work for you. So I was very, very impressed with this MCC hat, and there are others as well. If you head to the review on the Electromaker website, I will leave a link to it in the description. You can click somewhere down here. If you follow the Shop Now tab, it doesn't take you to our shop, it takes you to the Digilant page for these MCC DAQ boards, and there are various others with analog input and some, I'll let you look for yourself. There's some fantastic boards there. I was really impressed with this. It was a really fun thing to cover. Just before moving on, I wanted to do a little quick housekeeping. So if you are watching this show and you are enjoying it, I would appreciate it a lot if you would give us a subscribe. And by a subscribe, I mean underneath the video here is a button that says subscribe. If you are signed into YouTube, we will now show up in your subscriptions. That means that under the subscriptions tab, our videos will show up there. We're also much more likely to show up on your home page. But this shouldn't necessarily change your usage of YouTube all that much. However, if you click this little bell here and click all, then whenever we put a new show out, you will get a notification. That notification will only be here in YouTube under the bell. And as you can see, there are the notifications for the shows from previous weeks. As long as you do not have a desktop notification set up for YouTube, you won't be getting spammed by us when you are doing your work, but it will mean when you come to YouTube, you'll be able to just see whether there's a new show very easily. And the final one, clicking like does not seem like an important thing to do, but it does, it shows YouTube that you like the show. And the more people that like the show, the more likely it is that it will show other like-minded people the show. So yes, that's a couple of completely free ways you can help us on YouTube. As always, there is, of course, no obligation. Over on the Electromaker website, there are a number of things you can do to support us here as well. If you are a project maker, under the community tab, you can find that you can upload your projects to the Electromaker website. And as you know, if you're watching the show, we frequently feature people's projects from the Electromaker website on the show. There's also a link to our Discord server there, which is a place that you can come to discuss the projects you're working on. And at some point in the relatively near future, I'm looking forward to having a Discord-only live stream where we all work on something together. I'm just getting the setup ready for that. Of course, as always, absolutely the best way that you can support this show and support Electromaker in general is by heading to the Electromaker store when you're looking for bits and pieces for your next hobby project. As you can see by the name scrolling across the top of the page, we stock pretty much everything from everyone, and if you are thinking of getting something, getting it from us would be a great help. But yes, no obligation, and that's enough self-promotion just for now. Let's get on with the rest of the show, shall we? Up next, we have Funding Website Things. This is the part of the show where we go to funding websites and we look at things. Yeah. And we are starting here on Crowd Supply with the Phi Mainboard 5LC. Now, I'm pronouncing it Phi. Some of you may pronounce it Phi. I have no idea what the correct pronunciation of that is. However, I do know that it is an open source ESP32 3D printer controller with built-in Wi-Fi and Ethernet. Now, 3D printer mainboards are something that are pretty hot swappable. Most 3D printers allow you to swap the mainboard out. Most of them have interfaces for things like LCD, so you can use the same LCD screens. Some people just completely eschew that and just start using entirely web-based interfaces, and I feel like this board would be absolutely perfect for that. because as it says, it has Wi-Fi and Ethernet built in, and everything else built in too. I've always sort of thought the ESP32 was in a perfect position to do 3D printing, because it's a very powerful chip and it comes with communication built in. This, as you can see by the form factor of the page, this is pre-launch. There's no pricing for this yet. If you are interested, you can obviously enter your details here, but there is some kind of interesting information about it. So yes, there are two microcontrollers on here. One is the SAM E51, and the other is the aforementioned ESP32 S3 variant. And it's going to be pretty nippy, basically. The S3 is the dual core. I can't remember exactly. Dual core 240 megahertz. But the SAM E51 is not particularly a slouch either. So there's a lot of power already sitting on this board. So as with most crowd supply projects, this is open source and open hardware. You can see there's actually a bunch of information here as to what is on the board and a labeled diagram. I'll let you go through that yourself. For now, I will leave a link to this one in the description of the video. Speaking of videos, they do have one that's worth looking at as well, just showing it in action. But if you are interested in this, you can enter your details here. Other than that, we will maybe come back to this one when it goes live. Now, we're over on Kickstarter to look at Pitter, and this is a bit of an interesting thing because I've never really covered something which is a Kickstarter that by the time you see this, it'll probably have finished. And even if you see it before it's finished, this Kickstarter likely isn't going to reach its goal. It's 18,000 in, it needs 25,000, unless it gets a big pump in the next 26 hours, it's not going to go live. So why am I showing it on the show? Because I think as a concept it is very interesting, and I hope it's something that these people either keep trying and come back to, or other people have a go at working with. So 3D printers that can work in multiple colors are nothing particularly new, but they're generally one or two colors, if you have an IDEX printer with two heads, or mixed colors. I have a mixed color printer as well. That's a bit of a nightmare, very rarely works properly, or you have to switch out stuff all the time. This is an automatic color switching cartridge for 3D printing. It's a really fascinating concept. That looks cool. I really like the way that looks. I know it's a time lapse. I know it's not as simple as that. I know this is the perfect print, but doesn't that look amazing? Now, as I've said, unfortunately, this actual specific Kickstarter will likely fail, but the idea behind it I hope doesn't. Because you can see here roughly how this works. There's all these different kinds of filament, and these are all different Bowden tubes, all running to the same print head. And then depending on which one you want, it moves the extruder head over and then extrudes. It turns it out. This video that you saw back here, if I stop, this is not specific to this invention. This color changing block is something that you'll be familiar with if you do have a multi-color 3D printer that uses the same one nozzle to pull it out. If you need to push all of the old material out before you can start printing, or you get horrible mixed colors. And sometimes you want mixed colors, and sometimes it's nice, you get gradients. But of course, in this instance, you wouldn't. So anyway, I'm not going to go into much more detail about this because, as I said, this is a Kickstarter that probably by the time you see this video will be over. And even if it isn't, unless you're willing to drop a good, how much do they need? Another $4,000 or $5,000 on the project, it's probably not going to get kickstarted this time. Which is a shame because I think it is a good idea and I wanted to share that idea. I suspect with my reach, even if I got to it earlier, it probably wouldn't have done much better anyway. But I do like inventive ideas, and this is certainly one of them. I hope Stellar Move get back to this, and I hope they have more luck with their next crowdfunding experience. Up next, a Kickstarter for the Raspberry Pi Pico. Now this one specifically is about air monitoring, and there are various versions of this one board. But in short, this is a professional grade air monitor. It's the Bosch BME 280, I believe. Yeah, BME 280. This is a board designed for giving you accurate particulate measurements in the air. Is that what you call it? Particulate measurements? PM. And there are various versions of it. So if we scoop right down to the bottom, there's some great information on this page, but I'm going to scoot straight past it to get down to here, which shows you the different rewards. So the main one is just the Raspberry Pi Pico, and it also has the PM measurement device. I forgot what it's called. And there are various other versions. So look, this is the Wi-Fi version, which comes with an ESP8266 expansion. And there are other expansions too. If you look down here, there's the Wi-Fi hat. There's a real-time clock hat as well. And then there's this round LCD hat. There's various different things you can attach to it. Oh, that's interesting. They're selling the Air Monitor as a breakout as well. Very, very interesting. Anyway, the thing itself I liked just because I really do like sort of focused projects. This is a air monitor done well for the Raspberry Pi Pico. If you were wanting to get into learning how to do environment sensing, this would be a good place to start. And given that the base kit is only £35 with the Pi Pico, it's not that expensive either. The early bird version of the main kit is £35 and the Wi-Fi version is £50. Not a bad kit for getting started with this kind of thing altogether. They've already reached their goal. They only wanted €500 and they've made 4,000, so they're doing rather well. But I'll leave a link to this in the description if you'd like to back the project. It certainly seems like a fun idea. Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. This week we're back to a more regular sort of show, looking at some projects, looking at some funding website things and some fantastic new news, including those lovely little new Arduino modular boards. You may have seen them. And if you look in the background, you may also notice that the madness is slowly abating here. I'm finally going to have some tool storage on the wall. There's some rather janky LED strips around there. Things are changing in the Attic of Dreams for the better. Finally, which is very nice. Anyway, that's enough waffling up top. Let's get on with the show. This is usually where we would have the mystery box competition, and as I showed off last week, we do have a much larger mystery box to start working our way through, but just because of the My Cobot Pi competition, which is ongoing, we're not going to be having a mystery box competition this week. So this is a sort of interesting situation. What we're going to do is have two competitions running at the same time. If you would like to enter the My Cobot Pi competition, if you look at the previous Electromaker show to this one, you will find out how to enter the competition there, and indeed you enter it by commenting on that video. However, all of the comments on this video will be entered into the mystery box competition, as is the norm around here. And so next week we will have two prize-winning announcements, one for the My Cobot Pi competition and one for whatever the first lovely thing we pull out of this mystery box of mystery is. And there will be many more mystery box competitions and special competitions coming up in the future. But for now, let's get on with the rest of the show. Moving over to Arduino and their new Nicla ME Sense board, or Nicla Sense ME board as they are calling it. This is a tiny little board which has something in common, you could say, maybe to the Sparkfun quick mod slap together things that they have. But this isn't a completely new idea. This is something that Arduino actually tried to do some time ago and had to put on the back burner, but they've come back and they've made it even better than it was going to be before. But before we go into any more of the history, let's have a look at the thing itself. So there is a video here that takes you through it, and it is worth looking at. It's a very nicely made video. But essentially, this is a tiny sensor board. It has connectors for the battery, ESLOV, which is Arduino's version of kind of Stemmer or Qt Connect that Adafruit have, or the Quick Connect that Sparkfun have. And it has a bunch of sensors on it as well, as you just saw. Now, as you're seeing from the video, this is targeted very much at sort of professional medical grade ideas, and this is an Arduino Pro board, but of course Arduino Pro boards are still documented better than most other industrial grade boards, just by nature of the way Arduino work. But the sensors really are the key here. So, Bosch's SensorTech BHI260AP AI sensor system. This is the first board that has these chips in, or at least I think the first commercial board. I'm sure it's showed up in other places before. And it comes with an integrated motion sensor, a magnetometer, a pressure sensor, the unique 4-in-1 gas sensor with AI, and an integrated high linearity and high accuracy pressure, humidity, and temperature sensor. So this is, all of Bosch's new tech designed to work with AI, and I think this is at least implying that there is some kind of machine learning built into the chips themselves. I don't really understand enough about it to know whether that's the case. I do know that you can run TinyML and things like that on the barest of hardware these days. And of course, the Cortex M4 chip is more than powerful enough to run that kind of thing. So if you are interested in the new Nicla chips, they are now out. You can buy them from the Arduino store. They are €59. I believe this is going to be the first of many chips like this. The whole point of ESLOV connectors is that you can daisy chain things. Again, as I've mentioned, there's similarities here to certain Adafruit and certain Sparkfun boards, although this is aimed at slightly higher pro-level stuff, perhaps. We'll have to see how it goes over time. And if you're interested, this blog post is fascinating and definitely worth a read. However, as I mentioned before, this isn't the first time Arduino have tried to do something like this. The ESLOV IoT Invention Kit was something that they tried to put on Kickstarter several years ago. This was updated. Sorry, this was cancelled in October 2016. So this is something they've been obviously thinking about doing for a very long time. And look, do these not look a little bit familiar to you? The whole idea behind this was to use these ESLOV connectors to connect a bunch of little boards together to do a bunch of different stuff. A plug-and-play toolkit that makes it easy to create Internet of Things devices. And these things would have, perhaps unsurprisingly, different kinds of sensors, different kinds of input and output, and all that kind of stuff. It's not one-for-one the same idea of as how the Nicla Sense ME boards work, but you can definitely see there was something there that they've taken forward to the next one. I just think that's kind of fascinating. Another thing, good on Arduino, really, in a way, that they tried to do this. There was a load of people seemed excited about it because they showed it at the Rome Maker Faire, I believe. They started a Kickstarter, realized they were definitely not going to manage it, and said, we made a mistake. We shouldn't have done this Kickstarter, so we're cancelling it. And then they went away, did the work, and came back with something that on the surface looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't think of any other boards of this size that have this level of sensor tech in them. And if this is what Arduino are doing now, you know how this thing works. If Arduino are doing this now, I wonder what kind of boards we're going to be seeing from every other supplier in the next few months when they start getting their hands on the same kind of tech and being able to use the same kind of sensors in their boards. It's going to be an exciting time for absolutely tiny microcontrollers with lots of sensing and machine learning assisted things on board. Sticking with Edge AI, we're moving over to the Raspberry Pi now with a new audio dev kit from Knowles. So this is being reported on CNX Software, and this is less a making music, making audio type of thing and more a receiving audio in the way that you would speak to an Alexa or Google Home. This is a dual microphone kit, as are most of the microphones inside of these smart home devices, and it has some Edge AI inferencing here. It says, Knowles did not provide full details for the development, but it enables wake-on voice processing for low-latency voice UI, noise reduction, context awareness, and accelerated machine learning inferencing for edge processing of sensor inputs. And as you can see, this is designed to work as a hat on the Raspberry Pi. The hat part of it here, in fact, has a couple of user switches too. So if you would like more information on this, you can find that on the CNX Software site here. You can also head to the Devkit and AI Sonic Processors page here on the Knowles website, which will give you a bit more information. These things are not available to purchase just yet, or to put it more succinctly, they are available to purchase, but I can't give you a price because you just have to contact Knowles to find out how much they cost. So I guess unless you're specifically developing something right now, this is maybe something to wait until it comes to market. I just wanted to mention it because I find these things kind of interesting. I know that the cracking into a voice-activated system is something that many of us kind of want to do. I know that you can set up, say, Google Assistant on the Raspberry Pi, but that kind of gets away from the point. If you want to set up your own thing, which is completely from top to bottom programmed, yeah, there's different things that you need, and this is hopefully going to be one of them. In terms of programming, there is the DSP SDK, which is Knowles' SDK for working with the Xtensor chips on board. And there's, as it says, a partner program called OpenDSP, which will bring third-party libraries to the party. Now, this thing in and of itself is not all that unique. There's a few of these, but I just like the fact that there's a growing idea that this technology, this Edge AI technology, is getting good enough to work like that. Because remember, if it is Edge AI, that means it's doing your voice processing on site, not sending everything you say to Google or Amazon or whoever. I know for some of you those safety concerns aren't that important. For some of you they are the most important thing in the world. I am definitely somewhere in the middle of those two things. But this is a very interesting product, and I will leave a link to it in the description. And when it does go live, maybe we'll see how much it costs and we'll maybe come back to it then. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all the support you are showing the Electromaker show, be that on YouTube or by joining the Discord server or by buying things in our shop, which is of course the best way you can support this show altogether. But whatever you are doing, I hope you have a safe, fun and creative week, and I will see you in the next show.